Hello everyone, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. So today is 27th June 2025 and today we have some very important topics from different newspapers. So one by one we'll try to discuss all these important topics in a detailed and in-depth manner. And whatever topics that we have been discussing, they are important for prelims and mains examinations. So without any further delay, let's get into the discussion and let's understand these topics. And the first topic with which we are going to start this session is about poverty in India. And we all knew that poverty is a very important concept, and in Gender Studies paper 2 and paper 3 for mains examination, so this topic is very important. Now what is the context? Why this particular article has been given in the Indian Express newspaper? So recently World Bank has said that 5.75% of Indian people are living in abject poverty. So poverty is a very important topic, and for a country like India, which is a developing country, poverty is a main cause of concern. And in fact, so there are a number of committees which have been appointed or which have looked into the poverty in India. Some committees like Tendulkar committee, and in fact the Tendulkar committee, so it has said that it has in fact estimated the poverty levels. Now as per the Tendulkar's methodology in 2011 and 12, poverty in India was 21.90%. However, in 22-23, as per Tendulkar's methodology, it is 9.9%. And in fact, a World Bank's latest poverty line. So what is a poverty line? So poverty line is a line. So below that particular poverty line are people who are called as below poverty line people. So they are in extreme poverty. And World Bank's latest poverty line for lower middle income countries. So for India, it was 57.70% in the year 2011-12, and it was to 23.90% in the year 22-23. And so it is also said that India's poverty line per person per day. So in fact, as per the World Bank, it is 62 rupees, right? So World Bank's poverty line for abject poverty in India, so those who are earning less than 62 rupees a day, so they will be categorized as a people who are living in abject poverty, right? And in fact, 63 rupees, a price of a liter of Amul milk in 2022, right? So these are some poverty estimation levels, and we'll look into it and what World Bank has actually estimated about India's poverty. Now in the beginning, as I have already told you, that World Bank's 2025 poverty report, so it states that 5.75% of total Indian population, they are the BPL people, below poverty line people. So that means they are earning less than $3 per day, right? So they are earning less than $3 per day. So 5.75% of India's population, and they are in below poverty line. So therefore it has been highlighting the existing challenges in extreme poverty reduction and the persistent poverty in developing nations. So remember that the developing countries have been facing the issue of poverty from several decades, and in fact India is also a developing country, and in India also around 15 to 20% of India's population are living in below poverty line. So we don't have the census data of 2021 because 2021 census were not carried out, but we have a census data of 2011, and 2011 census data reveals that the total poverty in India is 21% as per 2011 census data. And in fact, the percentage of people who are living in extreme poverty, so it dropped from 27%, right? So it dropped from 27% to just 5.75%, right? So those people who are living in extreme poverty, it has been reduced from 27% to 5.75% in the year 2022 and 23, and that is equal to around 7.5 crore people. So therefore it has been showcasing a significant progress in poverty alleviation, right? So it is not a normal feat that India is able to reduce the people who are living in extreme levels of poverty to just 5.75%. It's not a normal feat, right? So this is a significant progress that India has achieved when it comes to the poverty alleviation. Now remember, poverty alleviation is one of the goals of the sustainable development. So SDG agenda 2030, so it is one of the most important sustainable development goal. So therefore overall, the decline in people who are living in extreme levels of poverty has been reflecting the positive poverty reduction trends, because India's fight against poverty through number of policy measures that the government has taken so far has been yielding the positive results, because it has reduced the people who are living in extreme poverty to just 5.75%. Now, India so far claimed that 171 million people were lifted out of extreme poverty. And again, this is not a normal feat, lifting 171 million people out of extreme poverty. So it is close to 17 crore people. So in last 10 years, India successfully lifted 17 crore people out of the extreme poverty. So therefore, overall, the government of India is committed for poverty reduction and also the sustainable development. Remember, as I have already told you, that the poverty alleviation is one of the main goals of the SDG agenda, and thereby addressing the existing multi-dimensional poverty as well. Now, what does this multi-dimensional poverty actually means? Now, when I say multi-dimensional poverty, so this is a poverty which involves number of other dimensions also. For example, housing, healthcare, education, employment, social security, social safety nets. So all these dimensions were taken together. So this is being called as the multi-dimensional poverty. Now we have the poverty trap or a chronic cycle of poverty. Now what does this mean? Right? So it actually reinforces each other. So if a family is a low income family, if an individual who is earning low income, so low income invariably means low savings, and low savings will lead to the low investment, and low investment particularly in education and healthcare. So if a person have no savings, so he cannot get a better education and better healthcare also, and it will further leads to the low economic growth, right? So if a person is not able to invest in quality education and quality healthcare, his prospects of earning a decent job would also be very less. So again, it would lead to the low income, right? So this is what is called as a poverty trap. But on the other side, a low income would lead to a low level of education and healthcare for a family. and then it will lead to the low levels of human capital, and overall there will be low productivity and low income. Now remember, whenever any question is asked on poverty, so you must draw this cycle, because it will enhance your marks, it will enrich your content. Now we'll understand India's domestic poverty debate, right? So what exactly India's domestic poverty debates revolves around. Now in fact, the last official domestic line poverty estimation has used Tendulkar's method, and later Rangarajan's 2014 proposal, it was never implemented with respect to estimation of the domestic poverty. So therefore, overall it has been highlighting the need for updated poverty statistics, right? So we need to have an updated poverty statistics to better understand the already existing poverty rates or poverty trends in India, so that we can come up with an appropriate policy. And this appropriate policy would target the people who are in extreme levels of poverty, right? So that is very important. Now when we have updated statistics, updated data about the existing poverty, so that will result in evidence-based policy making and data-driven policy making, thereby India making further progress in reducing the levels of poverty in India. And similarly, when we depend on a method, so depending on that method, India's poverty rate ranges from 2% to around 82%, right? Because there are number of methods, not even a single method to calculate poverty, but there are number of methods. So based on the method, so India's poverty ranges from 2% to 82%. So therefore it has been causing a widespread confusion. So what exactly the rate of poverty in India? Because there are number of methods and each method has been saying that India's poverty levels would be different, and that leads to what? That has been creating a lot of confusion about what exactly is India's rate of poverty. And in fact, it has also been emphasizing on the complexities which are existing in measuring poverty. So there is a lot of complexity which has been existing when it comes to measuring poverty, right? Because poverty is different. There are different levels of different types of poverty. For example, the multidimensional poverty, chronic poverty, this is long-term poverty, and the transient poverty also. Transient poverty is not a chronic in nature, right? So therefore it is like cyclical in nature, the transient nature of poverty, right? So there existing a lot of complexities also to measure the poverty accurately. However, India now depending on the World Bank data or the Niti Aayog's multidimensional poverty index, right? So in fact, Niti Aayog also publishing the multidimensional poverty index. So through this multidimensional poverty index of Niti Aayog, so we get some data which state has highest poverty levels, which region has the highest poverty levels, and how we need to frame the targeted policies that particularly focuses on people who are below the poverty line. And in fact, World Bank has also been providing important data about the poverty in India. So therefore, since we lacked data on poverty in India, so India now mostly depending on World Bank's data and Niti Aayog's multidimensional poverty index. So therefore, these things have been showcasing the importance of international poverty reports in shaping national policies, because the national policies which focuses on poverty alleviation depends on World Bank's data, right? So ultimately, using this particular data from Niti Aayog and World Bank, the government has been framing some policies which ensure that the poverty levels would be declined. A progress would be achieved when it comes to alleviation of poverty. Now we'll understand a poverty line and measurement of poverty line in India. Now, what is a poverty line? So, as I have already told you, now when I say poverty line, this is actually an income threshold. For example, imagine that a group of individuals, and in that particular group of individuals, 30% of individuals have been earning, 2,000 rupees. Right, so they have been earning 2,000 rupees per month, and remaining 70% of individuals have been earning around more than 2,000 rupees. Right, they have been earning more than 2,000 rupees. Right, so now it is being said that those people who are earning less than 2,000 rupees per month would be considered a people who are below poverty line. Right, so those people who are earning less than 2,000 rupees per month will be considered as a people who are in below poverty line. So therefore, this is the poverty line. So this is actually an income threshold below which a person is considered below poverty line individual, and it also varies from region to region and also from time to time as well. However, this poverty line plays a very, very important role when it comes to understanding poverty in both rural areas as well as urban areas. Now, I hope you have understood the poverty line. And when we talk about poverty methodologies in India, two committees which looked into poverty rates in India. So they are very important committees. The one committee is the Tendulkar Committee. So Tendulkar Committee in the year 2009. So Tendulkar Committee has said that 29 rupees a day in urban areas and 22 rupees a day in rural areas should be an income threshold. So those people who are earning less than 29 rupees a day, so they fall below the poverty line in urban areas. Those people who are earning less than 22 rupees per day in rural areas, again they fall below the poverty line. However, so it again raised to 36 and 30 in the year 2011 and 12. So thereby the Tendulkar Committee has established the national poverty line for the poverty measurement. So I hope it is clear and the numbers are clear for you. Now, even if you have any doubt regarding this, please type your doubts in the comment section so that we will address those doubts as well. Now, Rangarajan Committee, again in the year 2014 it was appointed, and this Rangarajan Committee has suggested that 47 rupees per day in urban areas and 33 rupees per day in rural areas would be the poverty line. However, this Rangarajan Committee's recommendations with respect to the poverty line were not adopted. However, it has been highlighting the ongoing debates in poverty measurement and also the need for updated poverty lines. Right? So whatever poverty line that we have in India is outdated. So therefore, there is a need for an updated poverty line. Now we'll understand what exactly is a multidimensional poverty index. Now this multidimensional poverty, so this is a poverty across healthcare, education, housing, standards of living, right? So it takes into account a multiple poverty, right? So it's not just about the income, rather it deals with the multiple poverty aspects. So therefore, the multi-dimensional poverty index that is published by the Niti Aayog, so it provides us a more comprehensive picture about the existing levels of poverty, right? Because it's not just about the income, right? So it's about other dimensions such as healthcare, education, and standard of living, right? So along with alleviation of poverty, we will also focus on other important dimensions such as education, healthcare, housing, right? So access to drinking water. So all these things would be taken into consideration when we measure the multidimensional poverty index. So multidimensional poverty index is much more comprehensive than the normal poverty measurement, right? So I hope it is clear for you. Now, poverty is a very important topic for the mains examination. At least one question would be asked from this portion. So therefore, this is a very important topic. Now, next is MSMEs in India. Now, MSMEs in India, it is also a very important topic for General Studies Paper 3. Now, in this context, so we'll be understanding. So what is a recently changed classification of MSMEs? And how MSMEs are important for Indian economy? And what are the challenges that MSMEs have been facing in recent times? And what are the ways we can revive the MSMEs so that the potential of MSMEs can be further strengthened? It can be further effectively used. Now, in fact, the MSME sector, so it has been considered as a cornerstone of economic transformation. Now, why it is considered as a cornerstone of economic transformation? So MSMEs contributes around 33% of India's GDP. So in any way, they contribute 33% to India's GDP, firstly. Secondly, MSMEs contribute around 35% of India's total exports. So this data might be outdated, but near about 35% of exports are from the MSME sector. And MSMEs also create around 11 crore jobs in India, right? So MSMEs nearly create 11 million jobs. So therefore, in order to create gainful employment opportunities, in order to boost exports, in order to boost India's GDP and economic growth, MSMEs are very important, and that is why it is said that MSMEs are the cornerstone of India's economic transformation, because they contribute to India's GDP, they contribute to gainful employment opportunities, and they even contribute to exports and the self-reliance as well. Through the policies like Make in India, India has been focusing on the self-reliance, or I would say Atmanirbhar Bharat. So we focusing on the self-reliance. So to achieve self-reliance, MSMEs have a very important role to play. And in fact, so we have seen that the government has launched Atmanirbhar Bharat, so after the COVID-19 pandemic, so that the supply chain disruption, so the problem of supply chain disruption so could be solved. So if India achieves the self-reliance, right? So MSMEs have a large role to play to achieve the objectives of Atmanirbhar Bharat. So thereby it enhances the economic competitiveness, it expands the manufacturing, so thereby making it vital to India's journey towards becoming a $5 trillion economy. Becoming a $5 trillion economy and a global industrial and innovation hub as well, right? So therefore, MSMEs in India would actually play a very important role. And in this context, so I would like to explain the revised classification criteria of MSMEs in Union Budget 2025. Right? So in fact, MSMEs actually means micro, small and the medium enterprises. They are micro, small and medium enterprises. So the current investment limit, the current before actually changing the criteria, the investment limit for a micro enterprise would be 1 crore and revised investment limit is 2.5 crore. For a small enterprise, the previous investment limit was 10 crore and revised investment limit is 25 crore. And medium enterprises, so the current investment limit was 50 crore and it has been increased to 125 crore. Now MSMEs are also classified based on the turnover limit as well. Before this 2025, so it was a 5 crore for micro enterprises and 50 crore for small enterprises and 250 crore for the medium enterprises. However, this has been changed to 10 crore in micro enterprises and 100 crore for small enterprises and 500 crore for the medium enterprises. So this is how it has been changed in Union Budget of 2025. So this classification is very important, right? So there might be a question in mains examination about the classification of MSMEs. So if you have been asked a question, so this table is a very important, and you should also remember this for the prelims examination as well, because this is important for prelims as well. Now we'll understand what critical role that MSMEs can actually play in national economy, right? So we have already understood the huge contribution that MSMEs actually make in Indian economy. Now in fact, so MSMEs actually houses around 6.3 crore of MSMEs. So in India we have around 6.3 crore MSMEs. So you need to write all this data whenever any question is asked about the micro, small and medium enterprises. So as I have already told you that MSMEs contribute to 30% of India's GDP and they employ about 120 million people. So they also play a very important role in providing gainful employment opportunities for India's youth. So thereby it is considered as a key driver of economic inclusivity. Now in fact, the MSMEs can actually play a very important role in reducing the regional developmental imbalances, because there are some industries which are exclusively located in a very few areas, neglecting the other areas, but MSMEs are located in those neglected areas as well, thereby overall reducing the regional developmental disparities. And in fact, these MSMEs are considered as the second largest employer. They are the second largest employer after agriculture, so thereby absorbing youth and it even promoting the entrepreneurship as well. Now here the problem in India is unemployment, right? So unemployment is a very big problem in India. Now why we have a huge unemployment? Now other thing is that India's growth rate is called as jobless growth rate. Now why it is a jobless growth rate? Why we have a huge levels of unemployment? Because Indian economy is dominated by the service sector, right? So Indian economy is heavily dominated by the service sector. Majority of GDP comes from the service sector alone. But the problem with the service sector is that it is not an employment intensive sector, right? So this is a capital intensive, this is a technology intensive, but this is not employment intensive. This is not job intensive or employment intensive sector, and that is the main problem, right? So that is the key problem here, right? But on the other hand, manufacturing sector is an employment intensive sector. But the problem is that India directly jumped from the agriculture sector to the service sector. Agriculture sector to service sector, skipping the manufacturing or industry, and that is why we have a huge unemployment rate, and that is why we call India's growth as jobless growth. So I hope it is clear for you. And in fact, so as we have already discussed that MSMEs create around 120 million jobs. So they play a very important role in creating gainful employment opportunities for the youth. So it not just creates the employment opportunities, but it also creates the entrepreneurship opportunities as well, right? So MSME is the sector where both skilled and semi-skilled workers would also work. Now, if you take the total skilled workforce in India, so it is less than 4%. When you compare India's total skilled workforce with other countries, whether US, whether China, Japan, South Korea, so they have a huge number of skilled workforce, but in India less than 4% of the total workforce is formally skilled, right? So in MSMEs, semi-skilled individuals would also engage, and so these MSMEs also boost exports. So how they boost exports? Because most of the MSMEs are they engaged in textiles. Now textiles are export intensive, engineering goods, chemicals and agricultural products, and because of this sole reason, the MSMEs would contribute to around 40 to 45% of total Indian exports. They contribute 40 to 45% of total Indian exports. And in fact, MSMEs have also moved beyond handicrafts to IT services, pharmaceuticals, renewable energy, and startups as well. Right? So it has been further diversified. So earlier they used to engage in agricultural products, textiles, engineering goods, but now MSMEs also diversified. They also entering into the other areas, for example, IT services, pharmaceuticals, renewable energies, new startups. And in fact, in recent times, we can see there is an increased interaction of these MSMEs with Udyami Mitra, ONDC, JDED certification 2.4. So all these factors have resulted in more and more transparency within the MSME sector. And along with the transparency, there is increased digitization with a sustained push from the Digital India, with a Digital India program, and even improved quality standards as well. Now, in fact, these efforts are part of the broader digital transformation agenda for the MSMEs, and thereby enhancing the GDP contribution through increased efficiency and increasing overall productivity, right? So they have the enormous importance for the Indian economy. Now, in this context, MSMEs can also play a huge role in enabling the Atmanirbhar Bharat vision. Now, what is Atmanirbhar Bharat vision? Now, India wanted to become self-sufficient and self-reliant. So we should not depend on other countries for essential or critical needs. Okay, so we need to achieve the resilience. Now this has been stemmed from the fact that during COVID-19 pandemic, we have experienced this supply chain disruption. So in order to immune ourselves from this supply chain disruption, so we need to achieve self-reliance. We need to achieve what? Self-reliance. In order to become self-reliant, MSMEs will play a very, very important role. MSMEs will play a very critical role. Right? So these MSMEs are central to national missions such as Make in India program, Startup India program, Digital India, Skill India program. So thereby further deepening the domestic capabilities. Right? So it plays a very, very important role in deepening the domestic capabilities. And in fact, they are also at the forefront of technology upgradation and the smart manufacturing initiatives. Right? For example, MSMEs would also engage in research and development so that they can stay more and more competitive as well. So however, MSMEs can actually strengthen the value chains. So they can strengthen value chains by producing critical components domestically and reducing the import dependency and boosting the economic sovereignty. Right? So in fact, during COVID-19 pandemic, we have experienced the supply chain disruptions. Right? So supply chain disruptions was the major phenomenon that we have experienced. So therefore, these MSMEs can actually strengthen the value chains by producing critical components domestically and reducing import dependency, and also further boosting the economic sovereignty as well. And in this context, agile and adaptive MSMEs, so they even integrate the technological innovation as well, right? So technology is rapidly changing, and MSMEs are also integrating or also adopting the technological changes, the technological innovation, so that would enhances the productivity and they would remain globally competitive, right? So they would remain globally competitive, right? So many are leveraging the artificial intelligence and also cloud computing to optimize their operations and also improve the overall customer satisfaction. However, so they even provide the entrepreneurial space to women and youth as well, right? So in fact, they play a very important role in fostering inclusive growth and also reducing the gender disparities as well. And this aligns with the broader goals and promoting youth entrepreneurship and the regional development. So overall, MSMEs play a very, very important role in achieving the Atmanirbhar Bharat vision, right? So in this context, there are certain challenges that the MSMEs have been facing. Now, what are the key challenges that MSMEs have been facing? Now, the main problem that the MSMEs have been facing is credit denial. So they are lacking access to the institutional credit from the banking channels, because these MSMEs lack the formal records, or the banking channels may often perceive giving loans to MSMEs is very risky, and that's why the banks are not ready to give loans to the MSMEs. So adding fuel to the fire, so delayed payments from the customers to these MSMEs further increases their working capital issues. So they don't have adequate capital to function well, and the banking sector also feeling that it is risky to give loans to the MSMEs, right? So therefore they have been facing the working capital issues, and that is the one issue. The second issue is these MSMEs actually have limited access to the already existing logistics, power and the transportation facilities, right? So if they don't have adequate access to the logistics, power and transportation facilities, so it will impact the productivity, right? So this is true for particularly for the rural MSMEs. And apart from that, they also face high energy costs compared to the other industries. These MSMEs are facing high energy costs, and even they are having inadequate distribution networks. So they are significant challenges that the MSMEs have been facing now. However, despite several programs that the government has already announced for revival of these MSMEs, so MSMEs still facing the skill shortages. The skill shortages particularly in tech intensive sectors, and it has been reducing the competitiveness, and it has been highlighting the need for more targeted skill development programs, right? So it is being said that they need a skill development programs particularly focusing on MSMEs and these tech intensive sectors. However, now in India, if you carefully look at the MSMEs, so these MSMEs have multiple laws, so they need to go through multiple laws and the licensing regimes. Now all these factors are actually result in complex compliance costs, especially for the micro enterprises. So therefore, navigating the labor laws and the environmental impact of MSME operations and other regulations, so all these factors are very, very challenging for the MSMEs to navigate through. and limited global market access knowledge. So they don't know how to access the global markets. So if they don't know how to access the global markets, they will remain less competitive, right? So they will remain less competitive, and it will also become very, very difficult for the MSMEs to further increase their exports to attract the foreign buyers. Now, all these factors have been plaguing the working of the MSMEs. Now, in this context, there is a need for the hand-holding support to the MSMEs so that they would have adequate market access knowledge so that they can scale up their exports as well. And there is a need to simplify the already existing rules, regulations, licenses. So thereby there will be a conducive environment for the MSMEs to operate. And skill development programs are very, very important. So skill development targeting the MSMEs, and there is also a need to provide a concessional power, a more competitive power, or another facilities at a more competitive prices to these MSMEs. And they should also have access to the institutional credit, and these MSMEs should be part of the priority lending scheme. Okay, so even if it is part of the priority lending scheme, the government can also announce some incentives or interest based concessions to MSMEs so that we can actually revive MSMEs and we can make them more profitable, keeping in mind the economic importance of MSMEs for India. Now, the next important topic is Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So recently, this Shanghai Cooperation Organization, so regional ministers meeting has been held in China, a place called Qingdao in China. Now, in this Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting, so actually a document or a draft document that has been placed before all the ministers. Now, India refused to sign that particular document. Now, why India refused to sign the document? So we'll be understanding this in a very detailed manner, right? So India refused to sign a joint statement. After every meeting, a joint statement would be put before every country, right? So India refused to sign a joint statement at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Defense Ministers meeting. So this meeting has been held in Qingdao in China. So why India refused to sign the joint statement? The reason is the statement excluded the Pahalgam terror attack. Right? So Pahalgam terror attack has been deliberately excluded from the joint statement. But on the other hand, the joint statement has Balochistan train attack. Right? But it has excluded the Pahalgam terror attack, and that's why India clearly and firmly stated that we will not sign this joint statement. And in fact, this joint statement also clearly reflects the pro-Pakistan stance. And India has clearly said that the document favored Pakistan's narrative by mentioning Balochistan but omitting India's concerns. So therefore, since it has not paid attention to India's concerns, so India did not sign the joint statement of defense ministers meeting at Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now, so there are some details with respect to Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So SCO first formed as a Shanghai 5 in the year 1996 with 5 countries: Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan and Russia, China. Now, in 2001, this Shanghai 5 became the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and in 2001 itself, Uzbekistan became member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And in 2017, both India and Pakistan became members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization at the same time, right? So, in fact, in 2023, Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit was held in India. So India hosted the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit for the first time virtually. right? So Iran was included as the 9th member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right? So in fact, there are 9 member countries in Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So you have to remember all those 9 member countries of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right? So there are some countries which are observer countries and some countries which are actually the members. Now the main focus of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is that regional development. So it focuses on regional development and also countering the Western hegemony. And it also takes up some security issues that these countries have been regularly facing. For example, the regional terrorism, ethnic separatism, religious extremism. So these are the issues that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization would take up. And it is governed by heads of State Council. So that is Shanghai Cooperation Organization's supreme decision making body, and it meets once a year, and its official languages including Russian and Chinese. Now, why SCO is important for India? Because it has a mechanism called Regional Anti-Terrorist Structure, or RATS, right? So this is actually a permanent organ of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right? So the headquarters of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is located at Tashkent, Uzbekistan. And in fact, the regional anti-terrorist structure, it serves to promote cooperation of member countries against 3 different evils. One is regional terrorism, ethnic separatism, and the religious extremism, right? So these are the 3 issues that the regional anti-terrorist structure would actually face. Now, what is India's stand in this meeting that took place in China? So Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, so he clearly and very firmly said that the statement has diluted India's position on terrorism and security. So it is a pro-Pakistani statement. It clearly and deliberately omitted the Pahalgam terror attack that favored the Pakistan. So without naming Pakistan, Rajnath Singh urged in Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting that SCO to condemn the cross-border terrorism and also ensure accountability of those countries which have been continuously promoting the cross-border terrorism. And India even objected to reference of Balochistan, where Pakistan accuses India of fomenting unrest. Now here India's stance clearly reflects the principles which were already enshrined in the Indian Constitution, that is DPSP's Article 51. So that actually forms the basis of India's foreign policy. Now, what are the implications on regional dynamics, particularly India's refusal to sign this joint statement? So India's stance actually signals a growing divergence within the SCO, so thereby weakening the regional leadership push. Now, what is China's role into it? So Russia actually distracted by the Ukraine, and China dominates the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right? So as of now, it is being said that both Russia and China wanted to dominate the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, but China are clearly winning this race because Russia is distracted from this Russia-Ukraine war, and now China dominates SCO using its influence, right? So there is also a growing divergence within the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and that indicates weakening regional leadership of China. So by India, by standing firm on this issue of cross-border terrorism, so India reasserts its policy of zero tolerance to terrorism and the strategic autonomy. So I hope you knew what is a strategic autonomy. So strategic autonomy is an independent foreign policy, so which serves our national interest, right? So we will not take decisions, the foreign policy decisions, based on the other country's interests, or on the no other country can dictate our foreign policy, right? So that is the strategic autonomy. So we do what is best in our national interest. So there are some domestic considerations also, and that's why India refused to sign this joint statement at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Defense Ministers meeting. Because India's electorate, national parliament, so they closely monitor these international engagements, ensuring that India's foreign policy actually aligns with domestic priorities and principles of the federal politics. So I hope you have understood this, and whatever defense minister has been done in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting is something that we should welcome. Because the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as a regional organization must condemn terrorism in any form. It should also condemn the cross-border terrorism as well. So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. And if you like our lecture, please subscribe our YouTube channel and also hit like button. Thank you.